I want to hop to the next slide. It's just kind of an outline of what we're going to talk about is essentially I call it work, but you can think about it as the factors that we are trying to consider when we started saying how are we going to make this thing happen and what things should we do first. We'll do a quick review of those factors, particularly as it affects work on private property and public property, and then also just quickly go through the proposed implementation methodology. In other words, who's going to do the work? Then get on to, I think, the heart of the matter, and that is specifically what work are we going to suggest to the county that they do first. And I suggest to the county, or say that because that is our suggested method of implementation, is to work through the county on this. And then lastly, talk about the impact of Blue Oaks, or drainage across the Blue Oaks property, which has been a serious part of our considerations as well. I would like to try to go through most of the presentation rather rapidly and hold most questions other than just clarification things where I say something I just can't understand me or something, and then have a good hearty discussion afterward, and I think we'll kind of get through things more quickly that way, if that's okay. Okay, so on to the next one. There's a whole lot of things that, as we started to look into this, we said, well, gee, we have to think about this, we have to think about that, and all of these things. And I think the most critical thing is, in terms of particularly prioritization, was where are the areas of the greatest hurt right now? And I kind of even modified greatest hurt to mainly include things where structures are at risk or are being damaged. And then second to that, where there might be property damage or erosion type of things that are facing people imminently. And then kind of everything else is almost in the background by comparison, particularly given the budget we're going to have to work with over the near term. The financing issue is a major issue. We have looked at, through the California Special Districts Administration or Association, the possibility of getting either a loan or issuing a bond. And starting with the fact that we simply do not have the revenues coming in that would be adequate to pay off either a bond or a loan type of thing. CSDA said you simply don't qualify. I investigated a couple of other municipal bond agencies that I was aware of, and essentially got the same explanation. And with the additional thing to keep in mind that if we were going to go for a $3 or $5 million bond to try to do this all at once, we would probably be paying almost $1 million in cost to float that bond. So that puts the overhead piece right from the get-go at an extraordinarily high level. And it doesn't include the interest that you then pay on that total amount. So you'd be talking about in the long run paying off maybe as much as $6 to $10 million in order to try to do the job right away. So we haven't really seriously considered any process that would say, let's try to do this whole thing at one time and find a way of doing that. We looked at prioritization and doing the most critical parts first and doing it over a period of time. Another major issue is the issue of doing work on private property versus doing work in the public roadways, which has a number of aspects associated with it. If you could flip to the next slide, I could go through those and then we'll go back to this slide. But that's a little too far.
You want me to zoom in? Or the previous slide?
The slide right after that. There we go. On private property, we have first and foremost the issue of getting easements for a right-of-way to construct and maintain anything that would be constructed on private property. I think some people are willing to do or give an easement for that, and some people are not. But it presents a problem that when we have things that have to be done on multiple pieces of private property, you may have to assemble all of the pieces before you can really logically do the project, or maybe not. If you can do the downstream portions first, it may help, but you've got to then consider whether it's worth trying to do just piecemeal parts of a project which would involve multiple portions across private property. Another whole question is, once that is done, who is going to own and maintain it? One of the things that Caitlin Gilmore from Schaff and Wheeler said, that if the current installations of the drainage system were actually fully maintained and kept up to snuff, we wouldn't be having much in the way of problems. There'd be very, very few problems to have to consider. And you get into the situation of, okay, we can construct a first-class system, but over a period of a decade or two, it would require regular maintenance. You've got to clean it out. You've got to keep it free of leaves and sticks and stuff. When a landslide blocks part of it, or the earth shifts or something, it's got to be repaired. So you get into this whole thing of who actually owns it and who's going to maintain it. Ideally, once we build it, it would be turned over to the county, but then you have the situation where the county can come in at any time and drive down through your property with a tractor and dig it up and repair it. So it has a lot of aspects to it that have to be taken into consideration. And then lastly is what design standards would we be working to? Making the assumption that we would do this through the county, then we'd be working to county design standards all the way through. And hopefully in doing so, then be able to have the county take over the operation, maintenance, ownership type of things. But there's just a lot of unanswered questions there. Another thing is, you go back to the easements, just the cost of getting the easements alone, there's 59 easements would be required if we did every project. And you could be talking at somewhere in the order of $250,000 just to get easements. And I say getting easements, surveying them, documenting them, getting it all signed off, registered and recorded and stuff like that in itself would be a major undertaking. Again, this is talking about doing the whole project, but you got to say, what are we going to talk about in terms of project? If you look at doing it on public property, many of the projects are on public property, although if I get my numbers out here, if I can find it, I meant to be able to mention these. There's 33 projects in total. Of those, some of them are mutually exclusive, so nominally, if you were doing a whole project, it would be 31 separate construction projects. Of those, 14 are mainly on public property, public property meaning mainly in roadways. I should have figured these out before. 12 are on private property, or partially on private property, and the remainder, 9 are on a combination of public and private. So you see, we can't necessarily just say, yeah, we're going to do the whole thing unless we can figure out these issues of getting rights of way on public or private property and the right, all of the recommended stuff associated with that. So it's got a lot of complexity that needs to be solved. Now, Charlie, if you can then go on to the next slide, which is the map that is on the wall on the left. Although you can't see them very well from there, but if you look at that, there is no place that I know of in the district, this is if you include Blue Oaks, where the water that we're going to discharge from any of the projects, whether on private property or on public property, does not eventually flow across private property. And another thing that the Chaffin Wheeler people, Caitlin Gilmore, advised us of is even if all you're doing is increasing the flow of water through an existing channel across private property, you better get permission from the owner of that property. And I think this has been underscored by our legal counsel as well, and that is that it kind of gets into the whole thing, you know, you go into a store, you break it, you own it. Well, when it comes to stormwater runoff, if you touch it, you own it. And if you own it and somebody says, gee, you caused problems that I didn't have before, you're exposed to liability. Doesn't mean somebody's going to sue you, but you're exposed. And so right there you have a risk factor which has to be considered, and that's inherent in the community. To say there's no place that the new or changed water flows would not run across private property. It's just a given if you look at all the projects. Okay, we can go back to the 2 slides. Okay, so I just mentioned the property damage liability issue. Another thing to consider is the impact of any of the designs on the existing public infrastructure. And it kind of comes down to what's it going to look like. Probably the most tangible thing would be some of the gutter modifications that are recommended to achieve a 100-year storm capability on parts of Los Trancos Road. You're talking about 30-inch wide, 15-inch deep gutters, which there'd have to be warning barriers of some sort to prevent people from driving into it, because it would damage your car and damage the gutter. So that doesn't mean don't do things, but it says if we're going to do it, people have to be cognizant of what the impacts are going to be, and in agreement that, okay, well, that's all right. It's going to change our ability to park along parts of the streets. It would change the ability of the mail carriers to deliver to certain stuff, particularly in the uphill sides of streets and stuff like that. So again, you've got a host of considerations in here to look at as well. Bang for the buck. Basically, this gets into the more subjective considerations of, in talking to people and looking at the projects and looking at the data that we had, where do we see the most serious problems right now that can be most quickly addressed with the money that we have available in the near term? I say the near term, over the next 3 to 5 years type of thing. So that was part of what we looked at. A couple of other things that are a little more subjective. We've been in long-term conflict, if you would have it, with LAFCO over their belief that the district does not have the authority to do this, and our legal counsel in the past at least has said that we do have the authority. But whether or not, whichever side of that argument you want to come down on, we've got to resolve the conflict. I don't think we can leap off into this and start trying to work on public property and roads and stuff and have an ongoing level of conflict with the county. It's got to be worked out and come to some degree of consensus whatever way we do it. So that's part of the consideration. And then lastly, and very importantly, is the adequacy of the district's resources to address this stuff. Charlie and I only know that water flows downhill unless it's in pipes with a pump behind it. And that's about our knowledge of expertise, leave my knowledge on expertise. Stormwater. That's an exaggeration. You learn as you go along, and I think we learned a whole lot from the Chaffin Wheeler people, and Caitlin was very patient with us, and carried us along while we asked stupid questions and things. But if we're going to launch into this, particularly in a big way, we would need to have somebody on a staff type of person, to essentially, at least on a, I'll say a half-time level or somewhere about there, be our representative in terms of implementing the projects. You just have to have an in-house project person on this type of stuff. That has the problem, then it eats up yet more of the budget. So if you're going along doing jobs piecemeal and putting people on the staff to try to do it, you're just doing things slower and slower. So again, that kind of drives the considerations of how would we go about implementing this, or what's the what do we think is the best way and most effective way of leaping into this and making it happen. So now we can jump 2 slides forward, Charlie. I guess here's what I was trying to stutter over before in terms of the distribution of projects. There's 33 projects in total. All of them involve construction or discharge, at least in some way, across private property. Private property in this case includes Blue Oaks. 18 projects involve construction on private property, 15 in public right-of-ways, and 11 projects would affect flows onto Blue Oaks. So that gives you a kind of a breakdown of the space that we're working in. And we've done some special work on the Blue Oaks question, and we'll address that last this evening. Okay. Any questions, Jeff? Not rushing along too fast?
I have a question. Do you consider Foxwood Road private property?
Foxwood is considered private property. Foxwood and a couple of other roadways, including Chiquita and Carmel, were not a dedicated part of the Los Trancos Woods subdivisions 1 and 2. For whatever reason, and we don't know the reason, and sometimes it's better off not to ask, the county has decided that they will maintain Carmel, but they have not opted yet to take on El Rey or Foxwood. So that's basically in the private property domain and category.
Are you on email a couple of points I want to talk about maybe up here? Are you on Wi-Fi here? Because I've done a dump load of research in that area, which I'd be happy to share at the right moment.
I think we want to do it, try to hold the major parts of the discussion until after we get through the presentation, and then we can start to go over these. If that's okay, unless it's really pertinent to exactly this.
It can wait till the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Just if you want me to send you something in the meantime.
Okay. Well, given that environment, that's the boundary conditions that we're dealing with. The strategy that we're working towards is to implement or have the San Mateo County Department of Public Works actually take on the implementation of all of the projects that would eventually be implemented, whether they were done on private property through easements, giving right of way, or solely within the public right of way. But keep in mind that any project that is done is still going to require some degree of acknowledgement from owners of private property to at least accept the increased flows, if not accept some degree of construction across their property. So that's part of the overall considerations. This is just driven by pragmatism. And we're going to have to work with the county anyway to do things on public roadways. If we want the county eventually to take things over and be the owner and maintainer, it certainly has to be done within the context of county design standards. They have people on staff who can do a lot of this work and essentially be the in-house manager of the programs. So we felt this probably gave us the best path to getting things done effectively and maintained over the long haul, would be through the Department of Public Works. The initial projects that we would like the county to undertake is part of what we'll be discussing tonight, and it's basically our initial recommendations to the county of, you know, based on the work we've done, here's where we think you ought to start. I think we have to consider these as recommendations, but I think so far we have a pretty good working relationship with Joe Ltcwd on this. And once we can essentially provide them with some money, then they can go ahead with this. The one thing we found out from talking with Joe earlier this year was that while they have adequate money to do maintenance of the system by and large, they have little to no money to be doing construction of new or vastly revised portions of the drainage system. So they actually, I'd say Joe kind of looked forward to this type of working relationship where we'd be giving them some of the tax revenues that come from the current revenues of the district in order to undertake some of these improvement projects. So I think it can be a good working relationship. So far, I think it seemed pretty good. Lastly, the future projects, in particular, this is if we go through with the dissolution of the district on other issues, would be guided through a community advisory council. The community advisory council basically is appointed by the Board of Supervisors, the members are, and just to keep things kind of short and simple, they need to work fully within the guidelines of the Brown Act. In other words, all meetings will have minutes, all meetings will be open to the public, the public will be given opportunities to speak. It's an open meeting type of affair, so the meetings would be very much like this, but the members of the council would be appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So with that, we can actually get into suggested projects, and just leap to this. This is just verbally what the suggested projects are, which unless you have amply memorized all of the projects on the map up there on the screen, this does you no good. But this says all or parts of these projects 1, 2, 3, 25, 27, 29, and 31. The all or parts is, for the most part, what these projects are focused on is reducing, hopefully eliminating, but that would be wishful thinking, the downslope spillover off of the portions of Los Trancos Road and Carmel, that instead of going down the roadway being captured by gutters or storm drains and then being hopefully directed to more controllable places, is going down across people's private property and then possibly accumulating behind somebody else's property and causing damages to their homes. It looks like much of this can actually be accomplished through curbing on the downhill side of Carmel and Los Trancos Road. Essentially, Los Trancos Road and Los Trancos Circle. Trying to remember the pieces. Piece of Los Trancos Circle, all of Los Trancos Circle, Los Trancos Road from basically 205, which is Jan Atwell's place, down to where it intersects with the Los Trancos Circle, and the part of Los Trancos Road that also intersects at that same point. Then on down the next part of Los Trancos Road, and then the two downhill parts of Carmel, part of which is after the first major curve and stuff. So I get up here and try to point these out. This should be Los Trancos Circle. This is the upper part of Los Trancos Road. This is about Janapolis Place right here. These two go down, intersect here, and then drain across either just 1148 Los Trancos Road or 1144 and 1148 Los Trancos Road. Then the other part would be from the intersection approximately of Los Trancos Road and Foxwood on down to the next major switchback at this point here. Most of that discharging across here, or some additional flowing down and discharging through.
Are there two lines going from Foxwood, wrapping around, going, is that just my? So that means there's one on each side of the street?
One was a pipeline and one is the curb, and this is where it's the part of the pipeline portion of this project is not part of what we're suggesting. We're suggesting only doing the curb portion of this. Lastly, you get over here to Carmel. Parts of Carmel, the downhill side is to the north, parts of it are to the east, but it would put curbing along here to keep that water from flowing into this area, and then curbing all along the downhill side here to keep water from flowing down this way. Lastly, this part of Project 01, which is a drain across the 144 Carmel driveway, has already been done by the homeowner, but there would be a drain installed to take water from the end of this turnaround and get it down to the level of the creek bed. This part of Project 02 has already been constructed by the local homeowner. So that is the extent of the projects. Yes?
Stan, in the summary that was on the website, it says the highest priority maintenance issue to be addressed as soon as possible is pipe 280, 281. What is that on that?
Got to get myself oriented.
Is that the one by Janet?
280 is the pipe that goes, or no, 281 I think is the pipe that goes across the road right by Janapolis Place, and the other one is this pipe here.
Thanks.
Now those are specifically spoken of as maintenance issues. That maintenance might be done by the homeowners, or it might be done by the county. The 280, 281 thing is a question mark in terms of what caused that flow to be problematic in the, I think, December 23rd, 2012 storm, but not problematic just a few weeks before in the December 5th, I think, if I have my dates right. There's been attempts to run cameras up and down that pipe, which have been unsuccessful. I talked to Tim Stansfield of the county a couple of weeks ago, and he went out and took a look at it and said it's not on our property. So now I think our next bet is to let's go talk to Joe Ltcwd and see what jointly can be done to figure out what needs to be done there before the upcoming rainy season. You know, the last rainy season we had didn't really test it out. But if we had a normal season, it could cause some problems. Now those are things that we're going to continue to try to get done on a maintenance basis. These are not the reconstruction of anything. That's why I tried to separate things. Maintenance would not be covered by any of the money that the district would be forwarding to the county. We still expect them to keep up doing their maintenance responsibilities and maintaining the existing part of the system as they should. So that maybe that language wasn't clear enough in there, but that's one of the key things that we're trying to make happen in this.
Maintenance issue. Right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a couple of other maintenance issues. For example, down here where this line comes down to Ramona Road, it's going downhill very, very steep, way fast, and instead of making a very sharp left turn when it gets to the top of the embankment there, it spills over and erodes. All you need to do is put a couple of bags of cement up there, it's gone. Little things like that we've noticed or we've heard from homeowners have said, gee, if they'd fix this, it would work. We're trying to bring these to the attention of the county, but we're not considering them part of the construction program. Did you have a question?
Well, with these suggestions that we're making, did we chat about this already a little bit about what are we talking about time-wise on this?
Timelines basically would be driven by the amount of money that we can accumulate, I'll say in a bank account, if you want to put it that way, with the county, to the point at which we've reached enough cash on hand to actually finance a project of, I'm going to say, critical size. You make projects too small and a lot of your money just goes into marshaling up the equipment and people. So you want to get a big enough project to make it worthwhile moving all the equipment in place and using
So realistically, what are we, okay, so this is 14 right now. We're talking 2
realistically,
years?
I would say probably 3 years,
3 years.
before we do anything. And it's just, that would give us probably $250,000 to probably put in a reasonable amount of curbing for that amount of money, if we can figure out how to do this. So that's the timeline that is.
Yeah, you're thinking about it, yeah.
It's just pragmatism. If we're not going to get money from anywhere else, we've got to accumulate enough money to do
There's
so.
no way to recover anything that we pay in every year. We paid in for 18 years, right? I mean, no.
Paid into.
Well, you know, the taxes that we pay every year.
The only money that we're really dealing with here is the portion of your property taxes which actually go to the water district, which is a significant amount. It's roughly 10% of your property tax bill, the basic property tax, not the additional stuff that's for bonds and things like that, or special taxes, have been flowing to the district. And,
That's about 300,000 a year.
right now it's about 300,000 a year. It's probably going to be somewhat greater than that in the upcoming year. We've forecasted 300,000, but given the increase in property values, it might be 305 or something like that. But it's not going to be hugely different. Right now, parts of that are going to be dedicated to the work that we're doing on brush removal and stuff like that. So, already some of that's allocated out, but we should have, at the end of the year, $200,000 or so still in the bank. But if the district's going to stay in business, we've got to keep a reserve. If not, then we can start to allocate that out to things that are, we agree with the county and said Woodside Fire undertake.
So who would decide what portions of the project would, let's say, be first? So the project plan, basically, would that be Public Works? Would that be Public Works in conjunction with our community group? And the reason I bring it up is because I think that enlarging or doing whatever needs to be done at that one place between 1144 and 1148 would need to be done before you put the curb in.
That's exactly what Caitlin Gilmore said.
Yeah.
Now, it can be done all as one project,
Yes.
but
It's got to be done first.
and actually, before you can do that, you've got to get agreement from one or both of these property owners to provide the right-of-way for that to happen.
Yep.
And this is one area where, quite frankly, I feel at least that we don't want this part of the drainage system to be under the care and maintenance of the property owners. Not that the property owners are bad, it's just property owners change. If you put this in place, it's got to be maintained, because this is going to be handling a fair amount of water, and it's got to work right. But the crux of the issue is, I think you asked how or what decisions would be made on it, or what parts of it. I think we've discussed the projects with Caitlin Gilmore at Chaff and Wheeler in terms of how to solve the most critical parts of the drainage which is coming down from here and across here and down here, and particularly affecting houses right in here. And based upon our collective judgment, and it's judgment, it's not data fact, because they acknowledge as well as they don't know that's where the water's coming from that's getting into Tom Sellenberg's place. It's just the best guess. Actually, there's one other part of this project I failed to mention, and that is right now water coming down off of El Nido, which is right here, dumps across the roadway and flows over land down to here. And there's no guarantee that that water is actually being captured in this gutter and then going down here. Some of it can be flowing down gopher holes and going elsewhere. So part of this would actually be to divert this discharge from going across Los Trancos Circle to going down Los Trancos Circle. And that involves not just some curbs along here, there's also some gutter improvements that have to be done so that the gutter on the uphill side would be adequate to handle the flows that are coming down there. But you can get into minutiae detail here, but the real decision on how these are going to be done, I mean, I think that if we go this route, we're going to be saying, Joe, this is what we, in our best judgment, and we can probably bring Caitlin into the discussion with him, the best judgment to solve the worst problems in the area would be to work these particular things. Ultimately, we've got to leave the final design and implementation up to them. They're going to be the owners of the solution. And it's not up to us to be dictating what is going to be done. And we do have control of the money, but I think that if we can get what we by consensus feel is the best possible set of solutions underway, we'll achieve the most, as opposed to trying to go it alone. I don't see why our judgment would be any better than Joe Lococo's and Joe's people. So, and I think their judgment would be better, quite frankly. So.
My specific concern is, if I'm reading all the documentation properly, is if you look up then on Los Trancos Road, so you look at your critical point between 1144 and 1148.
Right here.
Yeah, and now you make the turn, and you come up Los Trancos Road. So that would be the red line, I think.
The uphill.
Uphill. Okay, so water's flowing this way.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So right now, on the, if you're looking down on the left-hand side, there is a culvert, let's say, that where the water flows down, and it flows into that.
You're talking about right here?
I keep going down then to 1144 and 1148.
Okay.
Right. So from up where your finger was down to 1144 and 48. There is a culvert on the left side of the road as you're looking down, so north. And
going around this way or up here?
Why don't you stand up and point?
Okay. Okay. So along here on the left-hand side of the road, there's a culvert, and then it goes into a little pipe thing that's already there, crosses the road, and then does this thing here, right? Okay.
Well, actually, all you see is the part that goes from about here to here.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. The proposal says that on the right side of the road, it's proposed to put a curb. And the only thing that makes, that concerns me is, again, partially of steps of implementation, and partially just if you've got a curb on the other side, and then for whatever reason, water accumulates on the right side of the road instead of, so the downhill side, instead of into the ditch or the culvert that's on the left side, right? Whether it comes from El Nido or whether it comes from whatever. If you have water that starts going down Los Trancos Road that's being protected from going on these properties because you've got a curb, right? Then what happens when it gets to this point right here? Because it's on the curb is on the opposite side of where this little
Drain pipe,
drain
culvert.
pipe is, yeah, right? So, so then it seems to me it's going to make the corner.
Well, I think
It's
what
civil
you're
engineering.
pointing out is a key point, but these are the things that you want the design engineer to take into account. Okay, the idea is to get this water to flow there.
Yeah.
So they've got to design the curbs, any low spots in the road, et cetera, have to be repaired so that the nominal water flow stays towards the uphill side, and everything that comes to this point goes here.
Yeah, I think the issue though is that the pipe's on the other side of the street. So how are you going to get the stuff on that side of the street?
That's their problem.
All right, okay. Well,
Yeah, what they would probably do is, if there was no way of actually making it flow back across the road, is they'd probably put a drop box over here and run it across their diagonal.
Okay.
Because there is a good drop from the roadway down to the property level right at this point here.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I think something that should be addressed, because my concern is if you've got some water then that is coming down the downhill side and then it decides it's going to make the corner, is it, depending on how much water you've got, it may or may not make that, just make the corner. It may then all of a sudden become, you know, then these become potential grade. Because
That's an important issue, and I think it's, see, this is where you deviate from saying, do this project, you know, do whatever this, 25. The goal is to not have water spilling down here and to get it to all flow here.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking people to achieve the goal, not to put curbs in. Yeah, if they can figure out some other better way of doing it, fine. But the idea is to get that spillage contained.
yeah, and I guess the reason I bring it up is that there's nothing that I've read that addresses what you were just pointing out, maybe making a drop box or something. You know, that's not in this plan.
Yeah, but this is not design level details.
Okay.
So,
See,
and
none of these things are
Okay.
shovel ready. They're not
All right.
even close, okay?
Okay, so it's just more high level and.
Yeah, these are objectives. Cut this downhill flow as much as we possibly can.
Mhm.
Capture as much of it off of the roadway, get it under control, and take it over and dump it on Blue Oaks. I say dump it on Blue Oaks jokingly because whatever we do there has to be done correctly as well and has to be done with their consensus.
Sure.
So I mean, you can't just take what we don't want and throw it to somebody else. We got to come up with the solutions that work all the way through. And you're pointing out one part of the needed solution, and that is the idea is not to have water just going down here and then coming down here and zigzagging back and down. It's to get rid of it as quickly as possible. This solution actually only increases the flow here by about 25%. It's going up from, I think, around 5 cubic feet per second up to about 7. So it's not a huge change, but during a heavy storm, it can be important.
Yeah.
I think you had a
Thanks for all your time and effort and expertise and everything like that, everybody that's involved.
I should put it-
Really appreciate it.
Stan's done most of the heavy lifting on this.
You know, it's a lot of guessing.
If you can speak to and find the intersection of Los Trancos and Foxwood right there, we were looking at it before.
It should be right about here, I
Well,
think.
it's over a little bit, I think. So
Where the two lines are.
where the two lines start, right,
There.
that's
There we
the
are.
intersection right
Okay,
there.
yeah, this is Foxwood coming down here.
Okay.
Yeah, here's Los Trancos Road going on down this
Right,
way.
okay,
Yeah,
right. So that's the intersection right there.
yeah.
And the line or the red line that's going up Foxwood, yeah, right there, yeah, what is that a gutter, is that a pipe? And you mentioned before that it's a private street. So does that mean that also that the buy-in has to be from all the people that are on that street?
Whether it has to be all the people or just the people who
majority.
front on that piece of the
Okay.
property, I can't tell you for sure.
So let me, if I can share a little bit because we're just about ready to wrap up. There's actually a line not complete yet, right
Right
there.
here.
So PRJ02 down to the creek, one neighbor has taken initiative, he's here this evening. He's taking care of that. What's missing is the link from where that P is to that dot.
Yep.
And we hair's breadth away from having all the things done to get that done. And the county is requiring an engineering review. It's like, well, you've already said it's not your land. You've already told us it's, you know, whatever, a paper road, whatever, why do you need it? And they said, well, you can't build on anything without the county approval. So we're having to go through county approvals, and that's the road work engineers, the engineers. So the last piece is that one of us, and it's been me that's raised his hand to do it, has to put all the paperwork together that shows the design, the flow, this, that, everything, the engineering report, the soil, like Murray engineers have the design approved and so forth. And then I have to go around and I have to get a notarized signature from each of the owners to touch.
That project.
Touch that road. So the reason why I haven't completed that is because there was a typo in one of the engineering reports that it's got fixed on Monday. So that is a required piece that has to go in. So the only thing I can say is private road. Let's make sure we understand, because I think Foxwood falls into the same definition. But the way it was is that when it's the Wasson family that developed Los Trancos, the Wassons. So technically these roads could be considered still their land, but it's for our use, because in California you can't sell a landlocked piece of land. So we have a permanent easement to use these areas that were not dedicated to the county. So the question is, I've tried to coordinate with the Wayside people and the Santa Maria people, because they have the same things. And I think it's the Wayside people that actually created like a district of some kind, specifically just for maintaining the roads well.
Maintenance assessment district?
That's right, maintenance assessment district. And they all pay like a very little amount, $80 a year or something. And it goes into a pot, and that's how these things get fixed. But in this case, this is going to be so simple that we've just have a handshake agreement that will maintain.
On your project.
What we're going to do is every 2 weeks, one of us
Just
is
that
going
piece.
to have our gardener go down there and blow the leaves out of there, or if you want to do it yourself, from the months of April to November or something like that. But what I found is it's not enforceable because it's not our land. So we're not able to create any kind of encumbrances or commitments. So basically, we just have to just agree that that's what we're going to do. So
I think that kind of underscores the issue on a lot of the stuff on private land. It's just, you know, anything that we would try to do down through here would be
I mean, the
having
easy
all these
solution would
agreements.
be is if we could get to the Wassons, but they're probably now, 200 cousins, and you could
The Wassons?
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah, and you could never get them to agree to anything. So there isn't. I mean, they could make this very easy, and handle it that way. But that's just not going to happen.
I think you're asking about this piece of pipe in here.
Yeah, right.
And actually what that is designed to do would be to take the outflow from this pipe and direct it this way. And then it would flow through a pipe all the way down to here.
So it's not a curve, it's a pipe.
So that's a pipe.
It's a pipe.
And that one, I think Joe Ltcwd blanched out a little bit. They don't like long closed pipes, particularly in areas with lots of sticks and leaves and things. Doesn't mean it can't be done, it's just it's not part of what we're considering for containing the downhill flow along here. The idea would be to leave this as private ownership maintenance, improve these channels. There's two pretty good channels through here, as well as this channel here. I say pretty good, they need maintenance very badly. But actually in terms of capacity, if they were maintained, would handle a fair amount of storm flows very adequately. So that's actually part of the recommendations, is to leave this set of flows the way they are, improve these channels.
What does that mean, improve the channels?
Just put them back together. You know, there's places where the rocks have fallen in and are blocking parts of the channels and stuff like that. So it's strictly a maintenance issue. And it's not a huge maintenance issue. Now the one thing that would, if this curb were put in here, that would essentially capture most of the flow that currently goes down this channel here. So you would not have the entry flow in here. But these channels, all across here, these 3 channels, even with the projects that are shown, would have to be or should be improved, because just the runoff from the hardscape in these areas, if they're not improved, it causes the water to flow out of the channels and then across to undesirable areas.
Well, 2 of them go through my property and they dump onto Denise.
And one of them goes like
Denise.
through my driveway, and it's okay, but it brings a lot of dirt, and I feel like since I've lived here for 15 years, there's been increased water. I mean, I feel like stuff is getting fixed above us, and it's sending way too much water to my driveway.
Which property is yours?
I'm 113 Foxwood, mine's like a really steep driveway.
Right there.
Right here.
Yeah. So you
Okay.
see that from,
Yeah.
I'm 1091 right next to it. You see that black line that goes,
Through
Goes
E47.
through
Right
his
here.
yard.
yeah,
and
yeah,
goes
that,
into
that
my
one right
driveway.
there,
Yeah.
yeah. That goes right, and then we drain everything from Los Trancos as well as Foxwood. And then it goes in front of my property and dumps onto Denise.
Yeah, see
and
this,
north part of her house.
this curb would take care of reducing the amount in this channel, but I don't think the changes here would change the flow in this channel very much. And
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, because I feel like that kind of T intersection has gotten bigger. That long straight thing that dumps into R2 things.
Right here?
This one.
Yeah.
No.
Where is that? Is it, David, is that at your house?
Yeah, 29A, that pipe goes along the edge of our property. And we've maintained that, we've improved the pipe, you know, it's on the surface,
And you
so
put
we've
that in
sealed the
yourself?
joints. No, that was there.
That was there?
Yeah, that was
Kingsley
there.
put that in, or?
Yeah, Kingsley put that in. So we've repaired all the joints, you know, and secured the pipe and
Yeah.
things like that. So, you know, I mean, that's just, I consider, part of our, you know, general
Well, where does
maintenance
that,
on
where
our
does
property.
that, where does that water go?
That goes down Pier 23, yeah, it goes that way. Right, so it goes underneath, you know, it goes from underneath our driveway and dumps out, you know, across the street at Weiss. It dumps out at Weiss.
So does that show any water then going from that pipe down, increasing our load then on the left-hand side?
I'm not
Going
following
down
you,
there,
sir.
all that water is going to continue to go down to the right. Is that correct?
This part would not be constructed under any of the plans that we've recommended so far, because to do this, you actually need to do this pipe all the way down to here as well. So this part would not be done. This, you know, continue to improve this and take out whatever blockage is occurring up in here, which I think is a very recent change. And the flow would continue to come down this way, not down this part here, but actually back across here over to what was Ltcwd's property now.
So I'd like to ask a question. So we'll be done with ours, hopefully, assuming we're going to wrap this up. And both my neighbor and I are into this for quite a bit of money, roughly about the same amount. You know, this project's probably been, you know, should we share the price of that? We're probably into it for $50,000 total, about $25,000 each. So we're getting ahead of the curve and we're fixing it. I think a question I would have on the table is, if repair funds come up a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years, will you accept an application for us if any funds become available for what we already did? Is that possible?
I think you're way beyond anything
I'm
we've
just
thought
saying, I
about.
just want to kind of put it out there, because I think I'll continue to ask this question as time goes on, because we're doing it because we have to do it.
Mhm.
And we're having to do it because of all the things that are happening before us. And we can't wait for a 2-year, 3-year plan. We just can't. It's causing damage to our properties.
I think if you look at the recommendations that have been made, it's almost 100% within the public right-of-way, with the exception of this piece here, which has to be done in order to do these two.
But do you count Wasson-owned land as public or private? 'Cause it's not our land. It's not our. We're not doing it.
It's private. It is not maintained by the county, and that's the. Or if it's going across here, I mean, this is well, Chiquita was a roadway, but
Right.
this was private land here, for example, and it just. I think it underscores in very large part the issue of how much funding do we have and where are we going to get the money. I mean, this set of, I'll call it 4 projects or 5 projects in here, pretty much eat up the funding that I think is going to be available in the next 4 or 5 years.
May I kind of underscore Steve, if you look at the bottom of the approach, if you're going to increase flows and capacities from the top, if the bottom portions aren't fixed, then you simply create additional problems to an existing problem. So if no one's willing to fix it, but we fix it, I mean, essentially, if this goes forward, if we don't take the initiative on our part to fix it, then the problem we have is that we're incurring additional damage. So where do you begin? Do you know, everything I've read and everything I know to date suggests that you begin at the bottom before you go to the top.
Well, I think that if you look at the recommendations that have been made, okay, the bottom in this case is here. The water's flowing this way, and this way. And the bottom becomes these 2 discharge points. It doesn't look like the bottom because it's up, but basically I think that addresses what you're saying. We have not recommended any changes that would change the flows down these paths here. The change here of taking the flow that comes off of El Nido and running it down this way will probably reduce somewhat the amount of water flowing down this path here and possibly down this path, because some of this comes down here and then on down this way. But the direct path for the water that discharges through this pipe that runs under Los Trancos Circle from El Nido, it gets over into here and then just kind of spreads out. And so it's really hard to say exactly where it ends up.
It wouldn't be hitting Carmel either way. They're not connected.
Yeah.
So I brought this point up before, that there is a mechanism by which, if a project like this occurs, and depending upon what the status is of the water board, but if we as private residences give you the funds to do one of these projects, then it becomes a tax write-off because it's a donation to a public entity. I'm just throwing it out there. It's worth investigating because right now this is right out of our pockets. If that mechanism existed, when we write these checks, we could write the check to you and you reimburse their contractor, in which case it's not costing you a net difference and it's giving us a tax consideration.
Well, let's just take this piece right here, which I think the one we're talking about. And potentially, you might be able to do the same thing with respect to DPW doing the work. Is, okay, DPW, if we give you...
They won't do it because if they touch it, they own it. So if they touch Chiquita, the county owns it.
Future maintenance.
They won't touch it. I've already gone down that path.
But see, that's the issue on any of the work on private land. You look at virtually everything else in here is on private land. And so it has the same constraints associated with it. If they touch it, they own it.
I just don't know if you as an entity might be different from that. I'm just throwing that out there.
You see, it would mean the same thing. If we touched it, we would own it. And as a district. And I just don't know, we haven't explored that, to be honest. I think, yeah, we're going to be talking with Joe Ltcwd in the very near future about these recommendations, and we can explore that with him as to how could this happen, because keep in mind, they're maintaining Carmel. Just, I don't know why they decided to pick it up.
They told me they can stop that tomorrow if they want. I said, what about touch it, you own it? They said, we could stop it tomorrow.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Just saying.
No, the fact that
They know that that's a private road. They're not.
Oh, no,
If you go there and open the plot map, they have it highlighted in yellow.
yeah, I've talked to Joe about that.
When they did the paving, did they pave that?
They paved, not our Chiquita problem,
Okay.
but Carmel, they have paved, they've oiled and gravelled it and everything over the years. But they said their position is they could stop it tomorrow. If they had a huge funding cut and they came out to pave, they could just ignore Carmel, and they could ignore Foxford.
Well, I don't think we know all the legal ramifications, and I told Dan Siegel he didn't have to be here tonight, and I don't think he would have the answer to that one anyway.
Okay.
But
Just raising
yeah.
just reviewing the conversation.
Well, seriously, Amelia, be sure that's Amelia left.
Yeah, she did. She left the tape recorder.
Let's be sure that we catch that in terms of a discussion with Joe as to is there a mechanism that the type of thing that Steve is suggesting could be undertaken. Other questions on these recommendations in the back there?
Hi, Sam.
I can't see you.
It's Susan.
Oh, hi, Susan.
I've been listening to this plan as it develops. I'm also a board member, but I'm here tonight as a person. And my question is, how much time do you think these various projects will be in progress? You know, if you just estimate, it's not this year, right?
Are you talking from today until the time they get completed, or how much construction time will be
We
necessary?
kind of talked about it a little bit already, right?
Maybe, I'm sorry, I wasn't
Yeah.
here at the beginning. 10 years, 5 years, 50 years?
I'm guessing very, very roughly, because
Of course, we can't
you know,
know.
we don't know the real construction costs. We have the estimates from Chaff and Wheeler, but that these three pieces of channel, plus hopefully not a huge amount of this, could probably be done within 5 years. That would be saying, okay, we're putting at least $100,000 a year or so into the pot of money that the county could accumulate. Now that's just a real rough guess. It's a rough guess on how much money gets in, and it's a rough guess on the costs.
And how does that timeline fit with the board's jurisdiction or non-jurisdiction?
Board's jurisdiction for what then?
The board, some members are planning to evolve, and I don't know how you keep this whole project thing going if the board is no longer existing.
That would be part of the any agreement that we make with the county having to do with dissolution. It would be specifying an amount of the tax revenue which would be put into a savings account, if you want to call it that, with the Department of Public Works to undertake these projects. So I would expect that we would set that up on a percentage of the total revenues basis, and the agreement to construct these things would be part of the agreement that we had with the county having to do with dissolution.
I see.
Would you envision that this advisory committee that you mentioned in a previous slide exist should the district dissolve, or continue to exist, or would it also go away?
That would be newly formed, actually. The Citizens Advisory Committee is created through the dissolution process.
Okay.
The advisory
would
committee
exist afterwards.
existence would be mandated as part of the dissolution.
Okay.
And you know, that's a very important thing, is we're not just going to turn around and walk away and say, okay, it's all yours. It's, there's an advisory committee made up of people from within the community that can meet as regularly as they want and conduct information to the county agencies which are responsible for this.
But it's not, as I understand it, it's not elected. It's
Right, yeah.
appointed.
It's appointed by the Board of Supervisors.
And it's 3 people.
But you also said that it's subject to Brown Act, right?
It's subject to Brown Act, and it is as many people as the Board of Supervisors chooses to make it. Most of the advisory committees are much bigger than 3 people.
Oh, good.
I think one of the ones in the Fair Oaks community is too many. It's like 10 or 15 or something like that, which is an opportunity to get nothing done, in my opinion.
Would it typically be residents, or it's up to the Board of Supervisors, whatever they decide?
You know, I didn't pursue far enough down the reading in detail to know that it's residents, but I think it would definitely be residents. I mean, it's up to the Board of Supervisors to choose people that are going to represent the community, and I really don't think they would be going out and choosing somebody from South San Francisco and say, well, why don't you serve on this?
Yeah.
You're my friend.
You want to think so?
Well, we
We
can verify that. If you want to follow that up, just Google San Mateo County Boards and Commissions. And on the right-hand side, the upper right-hand corner of that, there's a handbook that you can click on, PDF-based handbook. You pull the whole thing down, it details every bit of it. I didn't bring it. We can put it up on the website if you want, but it's readily available.
So have we, a couple questions, have we considered a sort of our own, district, advisory committee to not have it all fall on you and Charlie's shoulders to, work on these issues and angles? Is there some sort of, interim, group that we could put together as a community to follow up on these? Because a lot of this stuff is just really micro details, in our private properties. And so it seems like there'd be people that'd be
I think
interested in.
we could start that right now if you're, Dave, if you're interested, we'd love to have you back on this thing.
Well,
What
no,
about-
yeah, but I just think that, that would be one way to help, share the burden of trying to, because it is complicated.
But what
There's a
about the
lot of
model
moving
that,
pieces.
what about following the model that Wayside and San Marie has done, whatever that is? There's people over there that we can get in contact with that have offered to talk to us, but what about looking at the way they constructed that?
But we are kind of that already, right? We're already sort of our own,
But it's not specific to the roads, which include the water flow, right, necessarily?
We are a water district, and we're doing water. It's the thing that's more approved by LAFCO than anything else we do, except our own land.
Just showing it.
I think it's back to what we were talking about earlier. It might have been before all the people here now arrived, but some of the things that, if we're going to try to pursue this through the district actually being the prime mover, there's a number of things that we have to really solve, which we have felt the best way to solve them is not to try to solve those problems, but to try to come up with a mechanism through which the county is the prime implementer of this work. And that hasn't happened yet. We don't have the contract yet, but I think we have a pretty good feeling of what can occur, and we've got to work with the people involved to see if it can be pulled together. You look at the Wayside thing, if they have a community maintenance assessment district or something like that, at $80 per residence per year or month or something, that doesn't come close to the amount of money that it would take to implement most of this stuff. We're talking about, well, if you had a loan or a bond, your loan or bond service would amount to $250,000 a year.
How many? So your point well taken. But how many residents? What's our metrics again? A number of. Isn't there like 2 or 3 different Los Trancos districts? There's the original core, and then there's something
No, it's
like.
about 500.
Well, if you take all of Vista Verde and Los Trancos Woods, there's about 250 residences. not residents, residences.
And how many of that is Vista Verde?
Less than half. By
Less
not
than half,
much.
it's about 120.
45%.
Yeah. It's close to half and half, for all intents and purposes.
Could I just step back real quick to just kind of make a big picture point on this whole thing that we probably should have made earlier on? This whole thing is the district, and can you see what I'm outlining there? You can. Most of Vista Verde is not involved in this. In fact, all of it is not involved, just because the drainage issues up there really aren't that big of a deal. So if you look down more at the woods, there's this whole large basin right here that feeds the flow that went into Ramona, where we had the slide last time around. In comparing this whole basin to what goes on in this area up here, we felt most of the potential for new property damage was here, and that's why we chose to exclude this whole region for now, and then concentrate on what goes on in Carmel, and probably more so what goes on in this zone right here. So just to put things in perspective, it's really trying to identify where we think the biggest property damage is going on, or the biggest potential property damage is for a 30-year storm like we had a few years back, which was maybe a 5-year storm or a 10-year storm.
Yeah, that's a good perspective.
Can Dave and I at least get like a bronze statue somewhere, like in throw us a bone here. We've taken the bull by the horn.
Well, I think
Yeah,
bronze
taking on
statue.
huge prominence, you know?
No.
Well, okay, at first you said it was you were looking at 3 years to get things going, but at 5 years, this is really probably a 20-year process, this whole thing.
But if you talk about the whole thing,
Yeah,
it's
it's gonna go on
quite
long after we're
frankly, I
not
tell
here.
you, my own opinion, that it's a 20-year process if you try to do the whole thing. I seriously doubt that we need to do all of this. I mean, there's just things here that take us to the 100-year storm level from the 10-year storm level, and the county generally looks at a 10 to 30-year storm type of thing. And some of these things, can you go down here, Charlie? Got to figure out where I'm at. Okay.
What issue?
This piece here, very, very unlikely that it's needed. This piece here, just, I don't know where the numbers came from, but we didn't have many big storms this year, but during the biggest storm we had this year, I went down into Las Piedras, which is what this pipe would be conducting. There's barely a trickle going down the turnaround there. So some of these things just don't compute. This one in here, much of this has already been done by private homeowners. There's an area right in here that could use some help. If you go up to here, this pipe here is the one that flows down across El Rey and has been the source of some irritation right in this area. But this has been pretty much improved by the private homeowners up to this point. This is on water district land. Some of the erosion up here should be fixed. One of the nice things to do would be to effectively eliminate this drop box here and conduct this water down here and use it to help fill the frog pond in the lake. But
Which is empty now, it's unbelievable.
the point is you get up to the upper level here where we've been talking about the short-term projects. Our focus right away went up there. That's where the hurt seems to be. So that's where the focus should be. Whether it's 3 years or 5 years to get these pieces up here done, until we get really good numbers for what actually has to be done, and that gets down to almost construction level diagrams, we just don't know. The estimates that exist right now are so many linear feet of curb at such and such a price. And
There's always going to be something that...
they're engineering estimates to give you a guideline. And so, you know, I hate to be so loosey-goosey type of thing on the time estimates, but I just don't think we have numbers that you could stand behind to say whether it's 3 years or 5 years. I think 5 years is probably a pretty good bet that we could do most of it then, but hey, when they come down to, can you zoom up back up here, Charlie? Yeah, this whole thing here, there's a whole lot of ways that we're talking about in terms of trying to get water from here to here. And it can vary probably by $100,000 in terms of cost. So it's just, there's nothing to really freeze on a particular amount right now. Should we, go ahead.
Let me add just something here. I think that this meeting is very constructive, and I think it's terrific that you have these plans to talk about with us. And I'm concerned that we'll lose this kind of forum where we can all together look at something in a very formative process and come to understand it, and then come to raise concerns and issues or propose solutions as our neighbors have. That this forum is extremely valuable, and I'd like to see it continue as these projects come closer. And I don't know what the best way that would be, but the board, with all its faults, has done a good job here bringing us together and bringing this information to us. And I'd like to see something like this out there as we go forward. That's my personal thought.
Well, I think that's, you know, one of the important things we're trying to do in terms of walk this boundary between finding the money, finding the ownership and maintenance person to make the things actually happen, and still having a high enough degree of community input that we don't feel like we're just totally isolated and can't do anything about it. And I actually think that the fact that we'd be the source of money for doing the work, just say follow the money, I think that'll give us some degree of control. I don't think it's going to be an absolute degree, but I remember that control of this type of thing, it spills over from, okay, here's recommendations, here's engineering, go do it, to the politics side. And you know, right now I think we have a very good representative on the Board of Supervisors in Don Horsley. Doesn't mean he'll always be there, but so far the work that we've done with Don and Joe Ltcwd and the other people, they've been very responsive. I've had my differences with the county over the past 50 years and don't like them at times, but I'd have to say right now I think they're doing a bang-up job.
Good.
Okay, do you want to go over the Blue Oaks?
Yeah, I want to get onto the Blue Oaks thing real quick here because
I have a call coming, so.
Do you want the other map?
Well, just before we go there, you look at this discharge point, there's actually a discharge point right here, all flow onto Blue Oaks. And all of this work, whether it's this one or these two, create additional flows of water onto Blue Oaks, and they've very legitimately raised the concern that, hey, you're going to dump a lot of water on us. Now, if you can go to the other slide for a second, we've asked Caitlin from Chatham Wheeler to do some work for this on us. Okay, raise it back. Well, here's the changes. 10-year storm. See, these go to how much would be flowing through the Blue Oaks conduits. But in a 10-year storm, what we would be adding by putting the curbs in on Los Trancos Circle and the upper part of Los Trancos Road would be roughly 2 cubic feet per second. So it's 10% increase in water flowing through these two inlets. Same thing over here. The 10-year flow would go from 3.7 to 5.4, about a 1.7 cubic feet per second increase. Now if you zoom and move it up a little ways, stop, up. Okay, stop there. There's a lot of information encoded this, and let me see if I can just give you a little bit of feeling for it. And you can access these maps online and pull them down and zoom in on them yourself. But you see these lines here? Those actually define flow basins. So everything that normally would fall in this area would flow out this way due to the natural topography of the land. If you go, let me see a little of the higher part again. You can see part of the same thing here. For example, everything out here flows down this way. And hence the capacity of this thing here is huge. You pull down just a little bit more. 290 cubic feet per second.
So we're like,
it's a 4-foot diameter.
less than 10%.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just not touching it. Now, if you go up to the blue lines delineate where the flows that we would be impacting are going to go. So part of that would go to this intersection down here at Ramona and Los Trancos Road. Part of it would go up to the first big switchback, which touches Blue Oaks, and part of it would go across the 1144, 1148 properties. The red area, these two here, actually flow this way. In other words, by virtue of the roads, what would nominally flow that way is actually flowing this way because the road's conducted in a different direction. So if you actually look at this, what we're adding in terms of flow is what's between this red line here and this purple line. And that's the type of work that we've been able to have Caitlin do for us so that we can talk to the Blue Oaks people and say, okay, we're going to give you more water. We will try to make you whole by doing whatever is necessary in these areas here to prevent erosion. Probably just a web or mesh reinforced swale type of thing will handle it. But the key thing here is it's a very small area of additional area or additional flow that is actually going to be taken to Blue Oaks. Now, we've been in contact with Blue Oaks on this, as well as Brian Kangas and Falk are the people who did the initial design of all of this drainage. All these black dots and things are drainage drop boxes and pipes and stuff. And Ed Boccaccio is trying to interface into Blue Oaks. We've offered to cover any of his costs that would be associated with making his judgment to Blue Oaks, and we just haven't heard back from him.
Stan, as of 2 hours ago, we have.
Oh.
Late breaking news.
Yeah. The answer was?
Well, their homeowners association president has directed the engineer to respond and engage in conversation.
Okay, so big movement. No, I think that.
Well, it just took a little while to make the contact, and I think it's starting to happen, which is encouraging.
I think maybe having this meeting might have pushed it over the brink a little bit too, because they were asked to come up with this about 10 days ago. So.
Stan, I just want to say I'm from Blue Oaks and Homeowners Association, and I sent an email out to Ed as well to see if he was going to give you an estimate of what it would cost to do this evaluation, because we're interested in hearing it. We're interested in hearing it prior to the projects as well as the scope of all the projects. Because even though there's direct impact from some of the flows, there's also going to be indirect impact, so that's why we'd like to be carefully looked at.
Are you Joy?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Just what
mysteries resolved?
Yes,
what indirect impacts are you?
I'm Joy Elliott. I'm from the Blue Oaks community on the Blue Oaks Homeowners Association board, and Stan has come to board and spoken about this plan with us, but we needed further information from you folks.
Yeah, that's
I
totally
just wanted
fair.
to do this. Thank you.
You said indirect impacts. What?
Well, it's, you know, the engineers will look at it, but, you know, there's the direct flows that you're gonna be doing, but when you start moving things into the frog ponds and the other ponds, these are gonna be an indirect water flow that comes out of that too, and it may or may not have an impact. I just wanna make sure we do a thorough job looking at it, because we just wanna understand what's coming down on us.
Yeah, but we know these very well, and you know, I'm sure we can get Caitlin to give us estimates for the changes in terms of flows into the frog pond and the lake, and some of that, you know, that's a very fungible thing. If you go, can you go back to the project?
The project
map?
Sure.
Yeah, pull this up into the middle, a little higher. Okay, the discussion here was to take the flows that currently go across, in the right place here? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Coming down Old Spanish Trail. Some of that currently flows into the frog pond. The idea would be to perhaps divert what goes through here, and that then ultimately flows down and under Ramona Road where we have the slide, and quite frankly use it to keep the frog pond and the lake better charged. Now this is again something that this is just, say, almost random music. If the community as a whole felt this was a good ecological thing to do to keep those water bodies full, and it didn't have a potential negative ramification in terms of overflow of the dam here or overflows back this way, then maybe that's a good thing to do. Maybe it's not. I call them random musings because what looks on paper like maybe a good thing may not look like it's a good thing to other people, and we've got to see what comes together. There's other ways of handling these problems here.
and Stan, isn't that red dashed line or dotted line? That's the ridge line.
That's the ridge line.
So everything, you know, that would go into the frog pond would be going the opposite way from towards Blue Oaks.
Yeah, Joy,
Okay.
No, actually,
That's
if it goes into the frog pond and it overflows the dam here, it would flow down this path.
yeah, to go into Corder Creek.
Yeah. So right now,
Right.
a great deal of this water that comes down this part of Old Spanish Trail flows over to Los Trancas Creek
Right.
through the property here. And the whole idea of eliminating this flow here is just to lower the pressure volume flows on
On Ramona.
under Ramona.
Right.
But that's not a big deal. That pipe has plenty of capacity under Ramona. So it's these are not major issues. The thing that this would solve would be right in here where, right over here, where the homeowners have pretty much made this a solid piece of pipe all the way across here now.
Joy, I think the engineer will back us up on this, but the flow out of the frog pond, as Stan was saying, is this way. So the frog pond, even if we were doing this project and if things were to go awry, it wouldn't go anywhere near the Blue Oaks houses. The Water District Lake, it's on the other side of the divide here, but the natural flow of it is actually into this basin this way. So if that were to overtop, it would flood in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's why we're waiting for confirmation from
Yeah,
BPF or
and
something.
we're happy.
Because it's very complicated plan, and even the land, unless you understand exactly what all those lines mean, it's difficult to tell where the water flows are and the impacts are. So that's why we just want to carefully understand it.
That's what I think it's pointing out. You have your own engineers to
Yeah.
look at it. Absolutely.
And Caitlin works for,
Caitlin works for Schaff and Wheeler,
thank you.
and
Because you referenced her a lot.
She made these,
Yeah, and she, yeah. Okay.
and I don't think either Schaff and Wheeler or BKF through Ed Caccio have really a vested interest in this, and their interest is really engineering technology. Here's what we think would happen, and so I feel pretty good about working with them, and you know, we can try to lead Caitlin around, but we can't lead her very far and get her to agree with stuff. So I I have a pretty high confidence level in those folks. So that really pretty much covers the presentation, and I think we've covered a lot of questions as well. But we can flip the lights on and talk about more questions if they exist, or we can throw in the towel and say we've had it all we can stand tonight, or whatever it goes well.
I gotta deliver my babysitter.
Sounds like we have a volunteer to,
Yeah, we're gonna sign him up.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. My wife's a problem. Yeah, that's a nice